All right, we are going to go over the review I gave to you guys today in class in this video. So hopefully we can answer any questions you have, and then tomorrow we can spend most of the class just answering a few other questions maybe instead of having to go over all of it in class. So let's get started here. We'll just start with the first ones up here. We have number 1 and 2. It says plot the vertex and then use a table of values to sketch the graph. Okay, so we are actually in vertex form. We talked about this in class, the couple forms that you might have to use. So with vertex form, okay, you have y equals x minus h squared plus k. So you can kind of gauge your vertex off of that because you know h and k are going to be what your vertex are. So the vertex of this graph is going to be, since this is not a subtraction sign, I have to think about it like the opposite of. So this is going to be -1, and then this is not a plus, so -3. Remember, it's kind of like the opposite inside the parentheses, and then it's what we're used to outside of the parentheses. So our vertex should be at -1, -3, which is right there on the graph. So now I need some more points, so I'm going to make an XY chart. I know that up to this point we've kind of done 5 points, but if 2 extra points is really all you need, if you did 5 points, that's completely fine. I'm just going to show you the 2 extra points, so I'm going to go one smaller, and I'm going to go, that's not smaller, I'm going to go one smaller, that's a -2, and then one bigger. Okay, so if I plug in -2 into my function, I'm going to get -2 plus 1 squared minus 3. So that would be -1 squared minus 3, which would be 1 minus 3, which would be -2. So I want to make sure zeros are going to be the same thing, because they should be, because this is -1 should be our axis of symmetry, so they should be symmetrical on either side. So if I plug in 0, 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 squared is 1. Minus 3 would also be -2. Okay, so I could graph those 2 points. At -2, it's at -2, and 0, -2. So like I said, if you went ahead and did -3 and 1, that's completely fine. But really, you just need these. And do your best here. Mine will probably look a little silly because I'm doing it on the surface. Alright, number 2, our vertex should be pretty obvious as we look at vertex form here. Number 2 is pretty laid out easily. Vertex for number 2 should be 1, 3. Okay, so over 1 up 3. If you notice here, my A would be a 1, so it's positive, it's got my parabola is heading up. This parabola will also be heading up because there's no negative out in front there. So my XY chart, I have 1 and 3, so 0 and 2. So if I plug 0 into there, I'm going to get -1 squared plus 3, which would give me 1 plus 3, which is 4. If I plug 2 into there, I'd have 2 minus 1 squared, which is 1 squared, which is 1 plus 3, which is also 4. Remember, they should be the same. So 0, 4, and 2, 4. Again, if you did another point, that's all fine and dandy. There is that parabola. Awesome. Okay, moving on. You can always pause the video if you need to look at some of that. Alright, so we're still in vertex form. Vertex form makes it really easy for us with the vertex. So our vertex is going to be -3, -2. So x, y values, -3, -2. So I'm going to go -4, -2. So pick one of those, plug it in. So 2 times -4 plus 3 take your time on doing the math here. Do your parentheses first. Negative 1 squared minus 2. So 2 times 1 minus 2, or 2 minus 2, which is 0. I'll check negative 2. So if I plug negative 2 in here, plus 3 would be 1. 1 squared would be 1. 2 times 1 is 2, minus 2 is also 0. Alright, so graph this. Negative 3, negative 2 is my vertex. At negative 4, I'm at 0. And at 2, I'm at 0. There we go. Should be positive because 2 out here is positive. Now our first negative a is going to send this graph down, but that doesn't change anything with our vertex, where our vertex is. So at negative 2, that tells us negative 2, and then 1. So xy, negative 2 and 1. So I'm going to go negative 3 and negative 1. And then I'm going to plug in my information. So negative 3 minus 2 squared plus 1. So get negative 2 times negative 5 squared plus 1. Which gives us negative 2 times 25 plus 1, which equals negative 50 plus 1. Feel like I did something wrong there. Alright, I know what I did wrong. Okay, since this is negative in here, this is how it should be. This should actually be a positive 2. So I'm going to go back and erase. Kind of made a big mistake there. So this can kind of sometimes give you a hint on some of that. If it's not on the graph, if it's kind of way out of left field, like it's not even close, that should probably generally give you a hint that maybe you did something incorrect. So my vertex should actually be 2, 1. So then my smaller one should be 1, my bigger one should be 3. Alright, that'll be a little bit better. So negative 2 times 1 minus 2 squared plus 1. Negative 2 times negative 1 squared. There we go, much better. So negative 2 times 1 plus 1 would give me negative 2 plus 1, or negative 1. Check it with 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2 plus 1 would also be negative 1. So if you kind of have that issue, make sure you go back and check, make sure, see what you did. I just took a moment to look, and I figured it out pretty quickly that I had the wrong x value of my vertex. So then at 1, it was at negative 1, and this graph is going down, so that's what it should look like. And remember, if you did more points, that's okay. It's always better to do more than less. Alright, moving on. Alright, we're still in vertex form. So this time I will have that negative 2 as my vertex, and then positive 2 as well. So xy, got negative 2, 2. And I'll go negative 3 and negative 1. So our favorite, some fractions in this. It's a joke for all of you out there. So negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1 plus 2. Negative 1/2 times 1 plus 2 would give you negative 1/2 plus 2, which would give you positive 1 1/2, or another way to think of that is 3/2. I check it with negative 1. Negative 1 plus 2 would be 2. Sorry, negative 1 plus 2 would be 1. 1 squared would be 1. Negative 1/2 times 1 is negative 1/2 plus 2 would be positive 1.5, or 1 1/2. So negative 2, 2. Negative 3, 1.5. Negative 1, 1.5. So it's very large parabola here. Wide parabola, I guess I should say. It's pointing down because we have this negative. Awesome. Okay. Now, number 6, we have a vertex of 1, -2. This one will also be pointing down. So we got 0 and 2. Plug in 0 there. So -4 times 1 minus 2, which would be -4 minus 2, which would give us -6. We plug in 2 there. 2 minus 1 is 1 squared. -4 times 1 is -4 minus 2 would be -6 as well. So 1, this graph looks a little different. 1, -2 would be about there. And then 0, -6. And 2, -6. There we go. So that's vertex form. If you have questions, make sure you come to me, ask, those types of things. All right, now we're moving forward, okay? And I told you in class you had a few options, okay? Some of these you're going to want to use standard form where you're using -b over 2a to find your x value, plugging it back in to get your y value. And some you're going to want to factor to find your x-intercepts. I'm actually going to split this video into 2 videos so that this doesn't get really lengthy. So I'm going to stop it here, and I will continue with the rest of the problems on the next video.